Welcome to another episode of Kinky Politics with Chris and Kai. Today we're going to talk about a bombshell kind of revelation that came out this past week in America anyway. Our president was revealed to have lied to us about coronavirus, how it transmits, how deadly and dangerous it is, and third thing, also lied about, not lied about, talked about why he was lying to us in the first place, which was to protect the stock market. So we're going to talk about basically your government lying to you. I mean, all governments lie to us, but what exactly are the rules for lying? Does this cross the line? Because, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have died in America at this point. I think it's like 500,000 or more. How many less people would have died if, our president and government had been honest with us the way pretty much every other government in the world was with their citizens? And Kai lives in Australia, in case people haven't caught that before, so she's seen a little bit different reaction to coronavirus than we did here in America. So what have you seen in Australia? Well, go ahead.
Sorry. No. Sorry. Go ahead. You were right on topic. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, what have you seen in Australia? And I mean, because you're looking at America from whatever you can get from the media in Australia, and searching the internet for media, maybe talking to friends and family, but you're not actually kind of seeing it every day here. What are you kind of seeing in Australia versus what you're seeing in America? And as an American citizen living abroad, like, what does it make you kind of think?
Honestly, as soon as coronavirus hit, and because what happens is all the other countries follow America. Australia follows America religiously. Why? Because we all want to be America. Because we think that America is the greatest place on earth. And honestly, it is. There's no place like America. And I hate to be like a patriot here, but I've now been living back and forth, but I've been living back and forth in Australia for 6 years as an adult. And there are so many beautiful and lovely things in Australia, and so many things that I have appreciated, but I will never take it for granted. I will never take living in America for granted again, because first of all, there's no place like home, and there's no place quite like America. America's unique. It is on its own sort of category, as crazy and messed up as it is at the same time. It's like a first and a third world country, in my opinion. Yeah. There is so much to love about America, and it really starts, I believe, because of its people. Americans are just unique, and all the people who go to America are in search of the exact same thing that the original takers of the land, settlers and shit like that, rapists and all that. But anyways, excuse me, all of the first people, all of our founding fathers, etc., we're looking for, which is freedom and the right to live, and the right to live well and in the way you want, and the ability to be as successful as you can, or as you dream of, right? So we're all desiring to get the American dream. And despite majority of Americans never actually being able to reach the American dream, we still as a culture believe in the American dream. And you can never take that away from the spirit of Americans. And that's why I fucking love America. Like, I hate to sound like I got my fucking American flag, but I got my American flag, you know what I mean? So seeing seeing America from a different lens in a totally different country, um, and seeing it sort of crumble around COVID has, first of all, shocked me personally, but also it shocked the rest of the world, particularly Australia. The Australian government freaked out as soon as America just went in response to COVID.
Yeah.
Australia was like, oh no, fuck this. We are not going down. We will do whatever we fucking have to do. We're gonna get all the scientists that we know in here, and we're going to have some kind of a system where we follow the best, the countries who seem to be succeeding in containing this virus. And that's what they did. Australia acted very swiftly. They acted swiftly as soon as they saw America's response. I want to add that is they didn't act as soon as like the breakout came out. You know what I mean? Like we were still fucking living. We were seeing the rest of the countries and we were like, yeah, whatever, fuck them. We're fine.
Yeah.
But when America started, oh no, when England started to get like weird and then America started to fucking pop off, the Australian government went crazy. And all of a sudden, each state, similar to American states, but each state in Australia listened to our prime minister, like took heed, you know what I mean? Like really considered what he had to say and said, you know what, if the prime minister is saying this, like respectfully, I think we got a problem here. And they all individually, all of the heads of states was like, we're going to follow a similar protocol that the prime minister is basically saying we should do. And they listened. We went into lockdown almost immediately. Businesses shut down in phases. It was really terrifying, but people were scared because of what happened to America. And so we were more we were more ready to give up our privileges or our freedoms for the sake of safety and for the sake of like wanting to stay alive, basically. So we followed shit. And then in addition to that, the Australian government has been very good for its people. We have had, unlike, the stimulus check that we all got, or some of us got, sorry. Australia has a number of social welfare programs already in place, kind of like unemployment, right? They've got that. Then they've also got stuff for small businesses, large businesses. Then they've got stuff for individuals who are working as full-time or part-time employees in those businesses where they get monthly income. Then they have stuff for for contractors or freelancers where they get like the amount of help that the government has provided its people. I cannot, I will forever speak so highly of the response of this government. They just sprung into action and were like, how much money do you need? We think this is appropriate, but we're going to get this together. And they're still paying out people every month. And it's expected to I think like these types of payments they're expected to go on until like sometime in the middle of 2021. It's really amazing. There are some areas that are experiencing the COVID in a much larger way, and some of them are some areas in the country are or were recently in lockdown again. So there was a couple of phases of lockdown, particularly here in Sydney. We had basically in New South Wales, so in the state of New South Wales, we had like one sort of major like lockdown where for, I think it was 2 weeks or maybe a month, I can't remember. You could basically just like take walks around your neighborhood and go to the grocery store and that kind of a thing. But nothing like that's it, you know? And I mean, the healthcare, like the healthcare system, like you could still, I was still going to the doctor during this time.
Oh wow.
And all of healthcare was like freaked out,
Mhm.
totally freaked out. Like all my doctors were like, oh, like has masks, the whole thing, you know? And, but they were like, we're here for you. Like, you're not going to, you know, like nothing, you know, whatever's going on, we're going to fix you immediately. Like, we're not going to let you die. Like, it was amazing the way they pulled together. In addition to that, they switched really quickly into what they call, I'm not sure if America has it, but telehealth. You ever heard of that?
We've switched to it during coronavirus out of basically being forced to, because
Okay.
now a lot of these places are doing like because mental health has been like a big issue during coronavirus.
Or,
Now they're doing a lot of like mental health on like you meet your therapist like this instead of
yeah.
in person. Um, my doctor, like unless you actually have to see the doctor, like if you just want them to, I don't know, there's certain things I don't see a doctor that much, but my doctor was telling me when I called at the beginning of this, there was some kind of prescription I needed, and he was telling me like he could write me certain prescriptions as long as it's not like a controlled substance. He can write those
Yep.
without even seeing me. I was like, what the hell? You can write
That
me a
is kind
prescription.
of amazing.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do that. I remember my dad saying something similar too. Um, I've had like a reoccurring ear infection that I like have gotten now like maybe 3 times in the past like I don't know 2 years.
Yeah.
And my doctor on the phone when I told him this was just early Corona times, I was like, "Yeah, can you write me another prescription for it? Because I think I got it again." He was like, "Oh no, you got to come in for that. Like I got to actually see." And I'm like, well, if I was in America, I just get the shit.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? You know, I don't like that. But whatever. I appreciate how thorough it has been, and um, also the transition of telehealth was like really quick, and there have been lots of mental health programs here that have been free, like literally free.
Oh wow.
Free. Which, I mean, if you don't have a computer or a smartphone, you probably wouldn't know about it.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously, there are a lot of poor people or sick people who don't actually know about it. But the accessibility has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that was a whole big rant, but I guess I'm just excited to talk about it because it has been really jarring and really scary for me because now I'm going to go back home
Yeah.
in November, and I've already bought my ticket in end of October. I've
Moved,
already bought my ticket and everything.
moved to LA?
Because
You moving to LA?
not yet,
Oh,
not yet. I got to see my dad and just like
you're just coming
like
to visit?
huh?
This is just a visit?
We'll see. I'll talk to you more about it on
I
off
got
off this.
you. Okay.
But
Well,
um, but yeah, you know, I need to come home and I need to see what the fuck is going on. Like as much as like this has been great, like hiding out here is what I feel like.
yeah.
Somehow I feel it like dirty, just you know what I mean? Like what's like all the people at home are dying and here I am just like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It feels sort of like I don't know, like not a sellout, but just like it's just not cool. You know, like there's something
You know who
about it.
James
Just doesn't.
Baldwin is, right?
Huh?
You know James Baldwin, right?
Yes.
Have you ever heard him talk about like why he came? Because I never knew this until pretty recently. When civil rights broke out in America, he was actually living in France as a writer. But then he said he could only watch civil rights on TV from abroad, knowing those were his fellow Americans. He was more concerned because at the time it was black people getting like beaten, stuff in the streets. He's like, I could only see that from abroad for so long before I just felt like as an American I had to go back and fight that fight because that was America's fight. Like this was happening 2 months.
right. That you're right. That's exactly how I feel. I feel like, I can have these protests at these, like I've been to all the marches that I can be in here in Sydney, and I've done all that, like I feel like I can from abroad, and created things and continued the conversation. But it is true. There's, you just have to be on the ground, and I just feel a little, I guess, a little guilty about not being there, so
It's
whatever.
it's messed up because hearing you talk about what Australia did, and then kind of remembering how America responded, which at
Yeah.
first was to basically kind of encourage social distancing, but kind of downplay how serious it was. And at the time, we didn't really know why that was happening because we're like, with Trump, anything's possible. Like he could just be crazy and actually believe what he's saying. But since he's has this cult of personality following, whenever he starts talking about something as if it's fact, all of his believers kind of start doing it as well. So for about the first month, he was kind of encouraging social distancing, making it seem like we didn't need to wear masks. And
He
then,
didn't wear a mask. He
yeah,
never wore a mask every time we saw him. It was crazy.
yeah.
How he was the leader of your country, the leader of the free world, encouraging this type of behavior, like how come?
Well,
I
there actually turns out to be a reason for it, which I don't think this applies in other countries, at least not in Australia or many countries I've heard of. But the reason he did it, to come to find out, because this has been caught on audio too, is because we had a shortage of masks. We didn't have enough masks for all of the people in the hospital to have them, like the people that were actually working with corona patients. We didn't even have enough protective gear for them, let alone the public. So he is on record as like talking about if he had been honest with us about the threat, there would have been a mad panic, and then you would have had like hardly anybody at the hospitals able to get masked, and then you're going to have just nurses and doctors dying from coronavirus too. So they basically made the decision to kind of sacrifice American lives to try and protect our healthcare professionals because we didn't have enough medical supplies. Because he had actually cut the budget like quite a bit since he took over for Obama. Like he slashed the budget that would like normally have us prepared for things like this. And of course, every department he puts somebody in charge of, their first thing is to slash budgets and deregulate stuff. So that's what happened with our healthcare, and that's why we didn't have the mask. So then we bought a bunch of them from China, as he's boasting about like how America's going to build masks. We just bought, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and millions of masks from China. So he lied to us for a few weeks about that, and then he lied to us about it being airborne because, then we just found out that he knew about this back in February. He knew about it, like, and on the recording, he's talking about how coronavirus is like 5 or 6 times more deadly than the flu. But then when he gets on TV, he's telling the public it's basically the same thing as the flu. So he lied to us about that for a couple months. I think he still lies about that one.
He says he lies convincingly is what I can't. That is what I can't get over, is
Oh
how
yeah,
convincing he looks. I always am just like, I know he lies, and I know to expect all the crazy shit that I know to expect it, but it's how convincing he looks saying the shit that gives me just makes me feel terrified.
as
Terrified.
as a trained actor though, is there a level of just like amazement at how well he can act? Because you know how like when somebody lies but they actually believe what they're saying, that's different than when they know they're lying and they lie so convincingly. They lie so
Yeah.
convincingly it makes you think maybe I'm wrong, even though you know
Yes.
you're right. That's what Trump does.
That is what Trump does.
Because I'm like,
And
how do you disassociate yourself like that when you're lying about stuff like this?
I don't want to explain that, and I don't want to talk about the man's like mental health, but I just think he's got a lot of fortitude he's just got a lot of fortitude, a lot of fortitude of strength. Like he's a very convicted person, in my opinion. Very convicted and very assured in whatever he is or whatever he has protecting him, or you know what I mean? Like he's got some kind of level of like, I'm untouchable kind of type thinking. And it's crazy because he's like, he's not a paid actor. Or
Wow.
is he?
Yeah. I think it seems like that's all we really want in politicians now is just actors. Somebody who can lie to us convincingly.
And tell me, like, how does this experience? How has it, especially being there? You know what I mean? And I know we've spoken before. You live in, a predominantly like brown and black area. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so you've seen a lot of things in Colorado, like that I definitely haven't seen, and you've been witnessing and experiencing what it really is like on the ground. How has it been for you with respect to all of this?
Well, that's kind of the weird thing is like it seems in America like it's kind of varied very much city to city. Like
Mhm,
LA and New York have had like huge problems with coronavirus.
mhm,
Colorado has actually done fairly well
mhm,
because Colorado is a very big state and
mhm,
um, lots of rural areas. That seems to be a big thing too. Is like in more rural states, less populated states, it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue because Nebraska, and I don't know if this is political or not, but Nebraska, I think, just announced that starting this upcoming week, they're doing away with like all coronavirus safety enforcement stuff, as far as I understand. Now, obviously, Nebraska is a very red state that could be politically motivated, but I don't know. I haven't heard of any coronavirus issues in Nebraska this whole time, but Nebraska has maybe 2 million people in the entire state. So, who knows? uh, me personally, I've known one person that's died, a coworker,
mhm,
but she was in the very high risk category. Like she had multiple health issues already. She was very obese, older. So she was in that high risk category. My manager at work got it and almost died, but he recovered. And then I had another
mhm,
supervisor get it and almost died, but she recovered as well. Um, Other than that, I haven't really heard of anybody at my work getting it, which is kind of weird because I work at an airport where we're around the public all the time, and that was the most frustrating thing for me working at an airport because I'm watching this coronavirus stuff on the news
mhm,
and I'm being told that we're supposed to socially distance and all this stuff. But then I come to work and you've seen airport security lines, how those are set up. So in order to go to work, I have to get on a crowded bus,
oh God.
jam packed full of people, like they were back at Purdue. And then you get to the airport, you're in that security line where you're just wall to wall people. And then you get on a little, and the way Denver's set up is it's like three different concourses, and a train takes you to each one underground. So then you get on this little train, you're packed like sardines to the train, and then you get to, where for me for work or for the customers to fly. And it's like, we were doing that for maybe 2 months after coronavirus happened before we started enforcing any kind of mask stuff at the airport. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're helping. That's the most frustrating thing for me is I know for a fact my employer, the people I work for, knowingly helped spread coronavirus around America because they didn't want to shut down airports for like 2 weeks and take that loss. But now what ended up happening because they wouldn't shut down airports for a couple of weeks like a lot of other countries did, and we had coronavirus just spread and spread and it's still spreading. Now they're basically going to take a loss on profits for the next like 2 years because they didn't want to shut down airports for 2 weeks. And it's like, but then all of us that work there, like we're the essential workers. They have all the commercials telling us how much they care about us, but we didn't get any extra pay. Like some companies in America, like have given like a couple dollars extra an hour to people that have had to work during coronavirus and don't have the option to work at home and stuff like that. Like I know where my dad works, they've done that, but we didn't get any extra pay. We got our hours reduced. It's just what, and over here, numbers wise, I think it's like Black and Latino people are 2, maybe 3 times more likely if they get coronavirus to die from it. Um, but there's also like we don't have universal health care here like almost every other country. So, predominantly people that tend to not have health insurance tend to be lower income brown and Latino people, and then people that are actually having to have jobs where they're interacting with the public, like in close proximity, are disproportionately black and brown as well. So, it's kind of like a perfect storm here in America. I know across the globe, I think, black and brown people are being more impacted by COVID, but I can't really speak to why that is in countries that have like universal health care. Because over here, like, you know, even if you have health care, like you might have health care that's so crappy that you might as well not have it, or you can't afford the COVID test. Because over here, you've had issues where people are getting charged like $1,000, $1,500 for a COVID test with health insurance. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy over
Well,
here.
I can definitely, um, say why I think and know that black and brown people are disproportionately affected is it is because most of the time black and brown people end up being the poorest of that demographic, but like as well as racial bias in healthcare. It's just a huge thing. Most doctors um, are white, and so there's just a lot of racial bias, we spoke briefly about racial bias prior to our conversation, but even here in Australia, there aren't a lot of brown people in Australia. There are not a lot of black people in Australia. There's a fair few of like Asian and white people, basically. But Aboriginals are dying at a very high rate and a very young rate, very young, have a very short life expectancy,
Yeah.
and again, most of the doctors are white. It was oh my gosh, I'll have to tell you a story. So, I did explain the story in that, I was talking to at the time I was talking to my New Zealand roommate who said to me, which was it was the most amazing thing because he doesn't, he just thought, he goes, I'm telling him about my symptoms. I'm telling him about like what's wrong with me. And he goes, have you ever, and I said, all these doctors that I go to always say like, oh, I think we should refer you to a specialist, irrespective of what this issue is. I think, whether that's a cardiologist, ear, nose, and throat specialist, and it could be any minor things, and yet they want to send me to a specialist. And I was telling him that, and he goes, well, have you ever thought that, there aren't a lot of people here who look like you, so they may not know how to treat you? And in that, I knew that it was wrapped up in something. Like he was actually saying, something very just like, at first I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're doctors. They just work on bodies, So I'm like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
But, when I think about it, especially from his perspective, and he was kind of saying it like sort of dumbly and naively, you know what I mean? But he's right in that, in many places we experience racial bias. Like, for example, like we know in America that there's a history of thinking that Black people, as an example, over exaggerate their symptoms or feelings on things, and they're just too dramatic. And so it's never as painful or as difficult as we may be expressing, or, we can tolerate much, higher levels of pain than people who are fair skinned. And that's just a historical sort of thing that was started in slavery, basically, and so, or just in general they don't want to treat, like they have just some kind of racial bias, or lack of empathy or lack of sympathy, and those things aren't like, those are just cultural sort of biases that normal people who happen to work in the healthcare profession may have, and so it was interesting to be on the other end of this in Australia and have a white doctor look at me, assess me, hear me, and be like, well, you don't sound like an Aboriginal. You're not from, you're not from Australia.
Yeah.
You sound like you might have an education. What do you do again? Where are you from? How old are you? Even though I probably know, but I'm nervous to get this wrong, I'm going to send you to a specialist just in case, because I don't know, I don't want to make a mistake here. I don't want to get into trouble. And
Yeah.
it was interesting just kind of being on that perspective, because I think in America, my doctor would tend to be like I had a doctor one time say to me, I'm having a really adverse reaction to this UTI medication. I'm getting like the side of my head feels like it's going to fall off. I'm getting this pounding headache. I feel like vomiting. My hands are really clammy. My heart's like just racing. And she's like, we give this medication to pregnant women. It is so safe. And she's looking at me like, are you an idiot?
Mm.
And I'm like, but I'm saying, I don't care. I'm having an adverse like an insane reaction to this. Do you not hear this? Can you just check my heartbeat right now? Like, I came in to talk about this with you because I can tell like something's wrong. And she's like, I'm not going to prescribe you anything else. And I'm like, can you write that? I said, can you write that in your notes? And she goes, is it really that bad? Because she didn't want to write it in her notes, right? Because she'd get in a lot of trouble, because I'm saying I'm having a problem here. You're saying no, and I'm still telling you I have a problem, and you don't want to. Now she doesn't want to. And she's like, well, we'll try you on something else, and we'll see what happens. And I was like, I just can go to another doctor. It's not a big deal. I just want you to write it in your notes. And she's like, no, we'll get you another prescription, and we'll see what happens. We'll get you on a, and it was insane. And for me, I realized that's a bias. Whether it's racial, we'll never know, right? Yeah. But it's some kind of a bias, and we know historically, based on, I hate to say it, slavery in America at least, this is where it started. Yeah. But in various other places of the world with respect to racial bias, it may not be slavery, it's just other things, because there's always issues of colorism in any country, right? Whether it's in whites or blacks or browns or whatever. So, and that's why I say, I think it's largely due to access to proper healthcare. So even if it has to do with class, so as an example, myself, I feel like in Australia, people, rather than treat me like an Aboriginal and just let me die or let me get sick or we don't know what to do here. Yeah. I'm saying they don't do, and I'm not saying they don't care. I'm just saying I just think it's a little bit weird that they're dying at an alarming rate and nothing's happening, and it just keeps happening.
Yeah, that's not a new issue either, I don't think. Like, Aborigines have had much higher death rates and suicide rates than, I guess, white Australians, or just Australians, however you want to phrase that. But for a while, because I was kind of shocked when I learned about it. I don't know, the past 5 years, I was like, holy shit, that is a really death rate.
Yeah, it's insane. It's not good. Not good at all. And but I mean, the only thing that I can think that would obviously I even forgot to tell you. Oh my God. The other thing was I went in for heart palpitations. I sound crazy, but I went in for heart palpitations one time. I was at a mall in a poorer area where there tends to be more ethnic people and Aboriginals. And incidentally, in the mall, there was a healthcare clinic. Wow. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm having heart palpitations. I got to go to the doctor immediately. And I go in there and I get seen by this Aboriginal doctor. Mm-hmm. And he's totally calm. And I've never had a doctor of color before, never in my life. And I thought it was such a whoa experience for me. And I'm like, I don't know, something's wrong with me. I feel like I'm going to die. My heart's, he's like, well, you're talking. So you're not yet close to dying, but let's let's take all the tests we can here, and then if we need to send you to the emergency room, we will, but let's not go there just yet. So
Yeah.
he's listening to my heart rate, doing all his things, doing a little doctor's thing. He's like, well, your heart rate is pretty high and your blood pressure is pretty high. Have you like exercised? Like, did you? And I'm like, no. And I'm getting even more nervous. And he's like, let's do an EEG and do all these, like, pin you up. And I'm like, oh my God. And so he has me drinking water and he's talking to me more and more. And he goes, well, your EEG is fine, but I'm going to have you go home with a 24-hour heart monitor to assess like what's going on.
Yeah.
And and then we can better understand. But your heart rate's now dropped. And then finally at the end, he goes, I don't mean to be rude, but do you take any drugs?
Huh.
And I'm like, no, I don't. And he's like, well, you never know. You can come from any background, any walk of life. And, Sydney here, cocaine's very popular. And, I just wanted to ask. It's a very common drug amongst, corporate,
Yeah.
basically. And I didn't know this doctor. He didn't know anything. I said, no, no. And I go, but I did have a coffee before I got here. And he goes, are you kidding me? And I said, yes. And he takes his papers and he shuffles them like fuck it all to hell. This is why I did all these fucking years of work. And he goes, tell all your friends, okay? But it's coffee that has given you these heart palpitations and that has raised your blood pressure like this. For you, it acts like speed. I've seen it with my 70-year-old patients who are Italian and who think that they need to have a cup of coffee every day. They've reached a certain point in their life where coffee does not react the same as it did years ago. And for you, for whatever reason, you cannot have it anymore. You cannot have it. So stop having it. Tell all your friends, stop having it, because it's not cool, okay? You're going to keep coming in here thinking you're going to die, and we're just going to keep talking about you not having to have coffee. And I thought, oh my God. And he's like, just take 3 days, have no coffee. I took 3 days, had no coffee. I was fine. I had no heart palpitations. It was a great, and I'm like, I can't believe this is it. But what was interesting was how much he investigated me and how much like lifestyle thoughtfulness he took into consideration about me and history and what all these types of things, which sort of helped him get to an answer unlike any of the doctors I've ever had in my life.
Oh, wow.
So there's something to be said about having doctors who are not just white, not just Asian, not just Indian, you know what I mean? Like, or not just, I don't mean just like, what I mean, but commonly, statistically, we know doctors to be either Asian or white, when we think of them, right? And it was just really sort of gratifying and amazing to see someone of, even though I'm not Aboriginal, but someone who had maybe the same complexion as me, identify or empathize and talk to me in a different way. So I don't take that for granted. And I think that there's a real need for more of that.
Yeah. Given that, this is not the first time Trump has lied. This is not the first time we've had a president lie to us. George Bush was pretty famous for a few lies. Um, do you feel this is a lie too far for the American public?
Do I feel like it's too
Because
far?
this is like, I can't think of another lie that has been on this level. Well, the invasion of Iraq lie was different, but that was never like, you never heard audio of George Bush on tape admitting he was lying about Iraq. This is kind of like up there with Watergate to me, like in terms of just like catching a president red-handed lying to the public. And
I agree with you. I do agree with you, Chris, but I think that half of the public, so that hardcore Trump supporting public,
Mhm.
is gonna find a way to um to say that it's just not that big of a deal, just as they have about everything, and we're gonna forget about it,
I
and we're
will
it's and it's just gonna pass because um we don't have a choice.
I will say Joe Biden's team was exceptionally quick and good on this one. I don't remember when this audio came out. I think it was like Tuesday or Wednesday. By the weekend, Joe Biden had ads playing at least every other commercial break of Donald Trump's voice just admitting all these things, like just Donald Trump saying that he lied to us and saying why he lied to us to protect the stock market. I'm just like, well, that's by far the best Joe Biden ad I've seen this entire campaign because he's just letting Trump, like, I just don't know how the American public can forgive him for this. Like, I understand his supporters, are going to be with him ride or die, but those people that were kind of on the fence voting for him last time, because I had multiple friends who are lifelong Republicans. They hated Donald Trump. They weren't sure what they were going to do. I don't know. Some of them may have just not voted for him. Maybe they voted all the other ones and left that one blank. I'm not sure. Um, but those people that are don't like Trump, and there's quite a few of them, but obviously have been kind of taught that Democrats are like an evil boogeyman. They can't support either. Is this just at least enough to get them not to vote for Donald Trump? Like, leave that one blank. Because I'm just like, how can you, as an American who's not brainwashed, vote for this guy after he, like, he lied to you about this? This isn't like, oh, this isn't like with Bush where you're like, I think he lied to me and I'm pretty sure he lied to me, but this is like Trump with a smoking gun in his hand, like after a murder. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how you can vote for him after this. Like, this is unforgivable to me.
I don't know. I don't know. I think we'll be surprised.
Yeah. Hopefully, this is a line too far because
Yeah.
this is just the most disgusting thing our government has ever done. And the craziest thing to me too that I've just kind of started thinking about recently is the guy that released these audio tapes. He's had these since February. Like, he's known about this whole time. It almost kind of makes me really upset. Well, not almost. I'm very upset with him too because I'm like, the only reason this came out is because he's got a book coming out like very soon. So he basically was willing to risk American lives to promote his book and get book sales later on down the road, right before the election.
Maybe because maybe he did it strategically as well, because it is right before the election. So he was like, really trying to like do some shit here.
Yeah,
But also like, I don't know. I guess I'm of the notion that it's not going to affect him. I don't think it's going to affect Trump and his
yeah.
campaign.
At this point, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
like, yeah. I don't know. This was the line in the sand for me because, as you know, I've been very strongly not leaning towards voting for Biden or Trump, but this probably pushed me over the line. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
I can't really fuck around. We got to send a resounding message. This is not acceptable. Like, I need to go back to the normal level of lies. Like, I can't go. We just can't have this anymore. Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
But
On that note,
yeah. On that note, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you next week. As normal, like, share, subscribe, and you guys have a good week.
Oh my God. Orange is not my new black.